Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. On behalf of the Canadian Iranian Foundation Board of Directors, it is my pleasure to welcome you and thank you to this event. My name is Nasrin Firsuf. I am the president and the founder of the Canadian Iranian Foundation, which was established in 2005. Its mission is to facilitate the social and cultural integration of the new immigrants, award post-scholarship, post-secondary scholarship to students, and support the humanitarian causes. As a part of CIF Orientation and Integration Program, we are delighted to be able to bring this event to you. For the people who are not familiar with the candidates, we would like you to meet the candidates, talk to them, and see which one you prefer and which one can meet your needs in this country. And be sure, if you are an eligible voter, please vote. Your vote is your voice, so make sure your voice is heard. Canadian Iranian Foundation usually would like to collaborate with the other organizations in bringing new events. And our collaborators in this event were Kanun Andishe, Khane Farhang و هنر ایران, Saroy Iran, Amir Sefri Foundation, Iranian Canadian Petroleum and Energy Experts, Society of Iranian Canadian Professionals of DC, and Hamyari Media. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to ask Camille Teymourian to come and continue the program. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope you will meet them and talk to them and ask them whatever you want. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming today, and thank you, candidate, to be here today for us to ask you an important question. Without further ado, I'll go to the rules of the event today. We have the opening statement, 5 minutes opening statement by each candidate. I can pass the mic in their table, or they can use the podium, whatever you like it. And after that, we have 2 papers read for the time is finished. And the yellow one is the 1 minute before the time is finished, so it'll give you a heads up to be ready. And we prepare 5 questions. We ask each question from each candidate, and you have 2 minutes to answer that. I prefer to stay in your table because it's not worth it to come to the stage. And then you have a 2 minutes closing statement. The order will be sitting clockwise. We pass clockwise in a rotation number, so we can start it, for example, from these tables and go from there. Please, I ask Andrew Sancton from the Conservative Party to start the opening.
Thank you. Thank you. Darood Bar Shoma, Iraniani Aziz. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I want to thank the Canadian Iranian Foundation and Nasrin Firsuf for all the great work they do in our community and for hosting us today. Thank you very much. It's great to see so many people here today and so many people from the Persian community, and I tell you why. Because the Iranian Canadian community is the largest single ethnic community here on the North Shore, and you deserve to have your voice heard. Canada is a cultural mosaic made up of different communities and cultures from around the world, and this is what makes Canada great. My background is in finance. I worked for 2 of the world's largest banks in 5 countries. I am currently the CEO of a real estate investment company, and I had the honor to serve as your member of parliament from 2008 to 2015. I'm also proud to serve as the president of the North Shore Folk Fest Society with Cami. The Folk Fest highlights the North Shore's diversity and includes terrific Persian performances, mostly done by the Ahmed Society, in which Cami's wife Pune is a big performer. Now, my father, like many of you, left his homeland. He fled persecution, war, and violence to seek out a better life here in Canada. He started a business, he started a family, and he worked very hard so that his children could have more than what he has. And I call this the Canadian dream. This dream was possible because Canada offered this opportunity. But the reality is today that it is more and more difficult for people to realize this dream with rising costs and rising taxes. I am running again because I am very concerned at the direction that this government is taking us. In the last election, Mr. Trudeau promised everything to everybody, and he didn't deliver. He promised a balanced budget by 2019. It didn't happen. He promised a transparent government. It didn't happen. He promised to normalize relations with Iran and open up our embassy there. It didn't happen. And the list goes on and on. I can't remember in my life when we've been at odds with so many other countries that are traditionally our friends. And I haven't even mentioned the scandals yet. The Ethics Commissioner has found that our Prime Minister was guilty of breaking the law not once, but twice. Friends, we need a change. When we were in government last time, we didn't get everything right, but we always had the best interests of Canadians at heart. And I know there were some policies that you didn't agree with, and I'm sorry for that. And if we work together in the future, we can try and avoid this from happening. But we need to turn the page. Conservatives and Iranian Canadians share so many things, so many priorities. Strong family values, good education, lower taxes, support for seniors, and support for small businesses. You and your community have contributed a lot to Canada. You have worked hard. You have brought your children up well. You have paid your taxes, and you've created jobs. You deserve to have a good government in Ottawa. I'm running because I want to help bring back good government to Ottawa, but I need your help to do so. On October the 21st, please vote Conservative. Merci.
Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce my assistant who's going to translate my words into Farsi, Lydia Adeli.
سلام، میخواستم از CIF تشکر کنم برای برگزیدگی این جلسه و از همه شما متشکرم که امروز تشریف آوردین. خیلی خوشحالم که تعداد زیادی از جمع ایرانی در نورث ونکوور اینجا میبینم و شما بزرگترین گروپ ماجوریتی در نورث ونکوور هستین و واقعا لیاقت هست که صدای شما شنیده بشه. همینطور که اندرو گفتن، کانادا یک کشور از فرهنگ‌های مختلف تشکیل شده و به همین دلیل کشوری است که در هر دنیا منحصر به فرده. ایشون اندرو ساکسون هستن، در زمینه امور مالی کار کردن و برای 2 از بزرگترین بانک‌ها در 5 کشور کار کردن. ایشون در حال حاضر CEO یک کمپانی سرمایه‌گذاری در ریال استیت هستند و ایشون خیلی افتخار میکنن که در سال 2008 و 2015 عضو پارلمنت کار کردن و با اسم افتخارشونه که پرزیدنت فولک فست در نورشور هستن و با کمی کار میکنه در فولک فست و فولک فست خیلی تنوع زیادی برخورد در است من جامعه رقص ایرانی. مثل که وقتمون تموم شده. باشه، مرسی.
Thank you. Next, I ask for Justin Bell from NDP Party, please.
Okay, great. Salam, thank you very much for joining us here today. I am so grateful to you for being here. And I also want to express my gratitude to the Squamish and the Tsleil-Waututh peoples, the first people of this land, for their generosity in sharing this unceded land with us. So I come from a long line of activists here in North Vancouver, and I grew up for the first 10 years of my life in my grandmother, Kitty Bell Sparrow's house over on East 6th Street. So it was my grandmother in the basement and my mother and her family on the main floor, including myself, and my Aunt Kathleen and my cousin Nathan on the top. Let's fast forward to today. So during that time, my parents were able to save up for a down payment on a house here in North Vancouver. And today, even in a dual income family, we cannot afford to do the same. And so what I really want you to think about is what are the root causes of that? We have had consecutive liberal and conservative governments, and things have gotten harder for everyday ordinary people and much easier for the rich and powerful. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I am a mother. I am married to a new Canadian, an incredible Mexican-Canadian artist who's with my daughter right now. He'll be here later. And I'm also a senior advisor at Global Affairs Canada. But the most important thing that I want you to remember about me is that I'm on your side when it comes to affordable housing, when it comes to fighting climate change like we actually want to win, and when it comes to investing in the services we need right now here in North Vancouver. So it's been incredibly humbling and empowering over the past few months knocking on doors. As I mentioned, people are really struggling to pay the bills, and people here are ready for a change. So this is a very important election with the issues of the cost of living, and if you think about it, families haven't gotten a raise in a very long time. And then we have these serious national issues like climate change and reconciliation with our Indigenous peoples here. Liberals made big promises in 2015, and what I'm hearing on the doorsteps is that people are betrayed. The Conservatives are going to promise you a few more dollars, but they're going to cut the services that we need. And then the Greens, they're prepared to compromise when it comes to issues of social justice. The NDP is not. So New Democrats are in it for you. We know whose side we're on, and it is not the side of big corporations and lobbyists. We have a proven record of fighting for you in Parliament, and we know that Canadians are asking right now for a more affordable life, universal pharmacare, and to take on these big issues seriously, reconciliation and climate change. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to save families thousands of dollars every year on their phone bills. We're going to stop the governments from profiting off of the interest of student loans. And that's why we're going to push forward with a bold plan on climate that creates over 300,000 jobs and does not leave any community behind. That's what we'll fight for in Ottawa, and that's why I'm asking you to send me there to fight for you, and I promise I will do it with love and courage. Thank you.
Thank you.
And one of our incredible volunteers, Saeed, if you could translate my remarks, please.
Sure. از شما برای اینکه به ما پیوستید سپاسگزارم. از شما برای پیوستن به ما در اینجا سپاسگزارم. از اقوام اسکوامیش و اسویتاوس جهت در اختیار گذاشتن این مکان سپاسگزارم. من از یک پیشینه‌ای خانوادگی طولانی از همکاری و فعالیت مدنی در نورت ونکوور هستم. در خیابان ششم لانزل به همراه پدر بزرگ و مادر بزرگم بزرگ شدم تا سن 10 سالگی. پدرم از طبقه کارمند و کارگر بوده و تونستن هزینه اولیه برای خرید خونه رو موقع تامین بکنن. در حال حاضر این غیر ممکنه چون هزینه ها بسیار زیاد بالا رفته و مردم علیرغم که 2 نفر کار میکنن نمیتونن این کار رو انجام بدن. مهمترین چیزی که میخوام به شما بگم اینه که من طرف شما هستم، مخصوصا وقتی که میخوایم زندگی رو هزینه‌اش رو ارزان‌تر بکنیم، با تغییرات آب و هوایی مقابله کنیم و پیروز بشیم و در اموری سرمایه‌گذاری کنیم که باعث زندگی بهتر و شکوفایی زندگی ما در نورت ونکوور میشه. چند ماه گذشته رو که رفتم و در حقیقت با مردم صحبت کردم، درسی بزرگ از افتادگی به من داده. از نزدیک دیدم که همه با پرداخت بیل‌هاشون مشکل دارن و این انتخابات مهمی که در پیش رو هست، مردم آماده هستند که برای یه تغییر بزرگ به ما رأی بدن. متشکرم.
Thank you. The next one from Green Party, George Orr.
Good afternoon. My name is George Orr, and I'm with the Green Party, and I'm hoping I can be elected in this election. And rather than somebody translating my remarks, I brought a young friend who I would ask to speak for just 30 seconds.
سلام. واسه خوب نیست برای سعی کنم واسه اسمم آیانه. منم برای 20 سال حالا من جورج رو میدونم and دوستم اینجاست باشه. So مرسی. آره من برای 20 سال حالا میدونمشون 26 الان. از من بچه بودم مثل من آورده مدرسه همش مثل کمک کرده با کارم و چیزا. من فکر کنم من گرین پارتی رو خیلی دوست دارم ولی منم فکر کنم خودم مثل مرد خوبه منم اینجام برای اون کمکش کنم من می‌خواستم بگم خیلی دوست دارم پیشون. مرسی خیلی ممنون.
Merci. Thank you, Arian. 200 years ago, another George came to North America. Religious persecution chased him out of Europe. He came with nothing. He landed here, and he worked hard, worked as a farmer, as a worker. He ended up starting what is now Canada's oldest continuously published newspaper, the Belleville Expositor. He learned English, he became involved in politics, and in the 1850s, he was elected to Parliament in Upper Canada before Confederation. I'm his namesake. I'm the fourth George in a row. I chose not to condemn my son Jordan with the same name, but it was a threat. We are all immigrants or children of immigrants, and what I've realized in my years of being a Canadian is the immigrants are the brave ones. They're the ones who left. They're the ones who grew up someplace and realized it wasn't enough. They were confined by belief, by religion, by whatever confined them, and they had the courage to go. And it's not easy to leave home when you're young, when you're old. The process of picking up and going is one of great heroism, great courage. And so we are either the children of heroes or we are those heroes. And I want to commend those of you for whom this is your first time in Canada, the new Canadians, for doing this, for being here. The Canadian process is open and democratic. Everybody's involved. We are all trying to make Canada, we're making it up as we go along. We're trying to make Canada the best country on earth, and your participation is required. My background, 40 years of journalism, storytelling, filmmaking, education. I have spent my entire life listening to people's concerns, focusing their concerns and putting them back into the community so that you could then hear the public debate on both sides and decide for yourselves. And after 40 years of sitting on the fence being the objective journalist, I decided I have to do this green thing. This is crucial for me, and I think it should be for all of us. The scientists tell us we have 11 years to get in front of climate change. This is not something we can kick down the road any further. 100,000 of your children walked the streets a week ago in protest here. 500,000 in Montreal. They're not deluded about something. They're living in fear. And if we just ignore their fear and go, well, that's nice, but what about the taxes? We're walking ourselves into a dark place where science says there may be no coming back. We have 11 years. That's 4,000 days. And every day we think about it a little more, study it a little further, we kick the can down the road. And we do a terrible disservice to our children and to the rest of humanity. Canada is a major player in the world. We need to step up. We have been, at times, a world leader in a variety of ways. And if the Green Party can have any influence in the next government, we shall continue to be a world leader in confronting climate change and producing the prosperity, because there is prosperity, that the sustainable economy will give to us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Rick. The next one from People's Party of Canada, Azmernian Jadavji, please.
Salam. I'd like to thank the Canadian-Iranian Federation for holding this event. I'm honored to be invited to speak here. Canada is at a crossroads. That you have arranged a place for civil discourse to explore solutions is commendable. As the Persian poet Rumi said, out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and righting, there is a field. I'll meet you there. And here we are today. I'm Azmernian Jadavji. I represent the People's Party of Canada. The People's Party of Canada is a brand new party. We've had the fastest growth in Canadian history. Within 1 year, we've got 40,000 members, and candidates in almost every riding. Clearly, there's a demand for our message in Canada. We have earned our place, and the people who support us, the silent majority, the quiet Canadians, have earned their place at the table. We are open to new ideas based on the 4 principles of individual freedom, personal responsibility, respect, and fairness. The traditional parties have failed us, and Canadians want a fresh start. The problem is that political correctness is getting in the way of truth and getting in the way of solutions. A little about me. I left university early. I founded a national legal services company which has a 30-year of continuous growth. My company focuses on restorative justice. We have helped over 100,000 Canadians get a fresh start. Since 1989, I've helped people get better access to justice and education surrounding criminal justice reform, and I've stood up for people so that they can understand their rights as individuals in Canada. I serve as the treasurer of the Canadian Club of Vancouver. For more than a century, our club has honored and celebrated Canadians in the arts, sciences, and public affairs. I'm a founder of several private sponsorship groups that bring in refugees who are in difficult conditions. I'm a proud father of 4 wonderful children. I'm a class parent of one of them. I live on the North Shore. I love it here. It's like living in the forest. We need to protect it. This place is perfect for me, but I'm concerned about the future for my children in Canada 20 years from now. We need a fresh start away from the traditional parties. There's little differentiating them today. They fall over each other, making promises, subsidizing half the economy and regulating the other half. I'm running for Parliament so that my children and all Canadians can continue to live in a safe, free, and prosperous Canada. Please vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one is from Liberal Party, Mr. Jonathan Wilkinson, please.
Salam, Dostan. I'm Jonathan Wilkinson. I've been the Member of Parliament for North Vancouver for the past 4 years. I entered politics only in 2015 in large measure because I was concerned about where Canada was heading, particularly its inability to address issues like climate change. The fact that we were dividing as a country into haves and have-nots, and the health of our society was at risk, and also because of the fact that Canada had effectively abandoned the role that it has played historically in the post-World War II era of trying to be a constructive force in international affairs. For the 15 years before I got into politics, I was a chief executive officer and a senior executive in BC's clean technology industry, working to address issues around climate change. I have been very privileged over the past 4 years to have been the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, working on environment and climate change issues pretty much every day. And for the last almost 18 months as Canada's Minister of Fisheries, Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard. I just want to touch on a few specific policy areas. Firstly, our Liberal government certainly believes very strongly in a compassionate, diverse and inclusive Canada. We believe that diversity is a source of both beauty and strength. One of the things that we said in 2015 that we objected very strongly to was the previous Conservative government's law, which created effectively 2 classes of citizens. One that applied to folks who were born here, from whom their citizenship could not be revoked, and those who had emigrated here who could have their citizenship taken away. We also obviously objected very strongly to part of the campaign in 2015 around barbaric cultural practices, which was part of the Conservative platform. We were very clear in 2015 that from our perspective, a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian. You have rights as a Canadian, and those do not distinguish between whether you were born here and whether you were not. One of the things we did immediately after being elected in 2015 was to get rid of this distinction. We also believe very much in a healthy society, one that works to manage differences between rich and those that have less, one that tries to ensure that everyone has opportunity. And so policies like the Canada Child Benefit that we implemented a couple of years ago raised 900,000 Canadians out of poverty, including 300,000 Canadian kids in one fell swoop. Poverty is now at the lowest level that it's been in since they started collecting statistics. In terms of foreign affairs, Canada now has re-engaged in the international community in arenas like climate change and peacekeeping. That has meant a re-engagement with many of our international partners. We have certainly been supportive of things like the nuclear discussions that were going on between Europe, the United States, and Iran to de-escalate that issue. Europe continues to try to make that move forward after President Trump made the decision to pull the Americans out. We did not follow President Trump's lead. We have continued to support the Europeans in that, and we will continue to do that. I would note that former Prime Minister Harper wrote an op-ed supporting President Trump's decision, and it was Prime Minister Harper who closed the embassy in Tehran, and the Conservatives have been harshly critical of any effort on the part of our government to engage diplomatic discussions with the government of Iran. With respect to the environment, climate change is an existential threat. We have put together a detailed climate plan to address greenhouse gas emissions and to begin to reduce them, and have committed to get to net zero by 2050. And in terms of economic progress, we have had the strongest economy in the G7. We have seen 1 million jobs created since 2015, most of them full-time. Unemployment is at 40-year lows, and the average Canadian family is $2,000 better off. And we've started to think forward about the economy of the future and how Canada will participate in that. This government came to power on a broad and progressive platform. We are not perfect as a government. I don't think any government is perfect, but we have delivered. A recent study by 24 Canadian academics showed that we have achieved 92%, or on the way to achieving 92% of what we promised in 2015, and we are continuing to move forward. I would say that we are asking you to support progressive politics and building on what's been accomplished to date.
با سلام خدمت همه کسایی که اینجا تشریف آوردن و با تشکر از برگزار کنندگان این برنامه. آقای جاناتان ویلکینسون رو من ترجمه میکنم. من خودمم 7 ساله که به عنوان یه لیبرال فعالیت‌های داوطلبانه میکنم. به نظر من و همینطور که ایشون گفتن، ما کسایی هستیم که از مملکت خودمون ریشه کندیم، دوباره میخوایم ریشه بدوونیم. باید در امن‌ترین جا این کارو بکنیم و به نظر من حزبی که این امنیت رو به ما میده حزب لیبرال پارتیه، چون هم با بیزنس ها کنار میاد، هم همه جور کازهای پروگرسیو مثل ایژوکیشن و مثل هلت کیر رو طرفداری میکنه. آقای جاناتان ویلکینسون گفتن که از محیط زیست میان، سابقه قبلی دارن و time is over.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now we're going to the questions. I will ask, I need to pass this one to the starter from here. Can you do me a favor? When you finish, you can pass both of these one. No, not this. One.
Okay.
Let this one go. Okay.
And the question is?
I will go started with the first question. What is your party's plan to strengthen Canada's economy?
Thank you. We need to broaden the economy and create opportunity for everyone. People are they're working harder than ever, but it really does feel impossible to get ahead. So knocking on doors, I'm hearing time and time again that people here in North Vancouver are struggling. Nearly half of Canadian workers are living paycheck to paycheck. In North Vancouver, over 67% of renters are spending well over 30% of their income on housing. This is not sustainable. We need to take better care of each other. And our plan, the NDP plan, will create good jobs and make life more affordable for everyone while taking bold action on climate. It's time to lift the debt burden from our young people and make sure everyone has an affordable place to live. And we need to expand our public healthcare services in areas like prescription drugs so Canadians can save money. An NDP government will create an economy that is better for people. And it will create a secure future for people of North Vancouver where we know we can have good jobs and live where we work. Our first mandate, we will create 300,000 jobs across the country in energy efficient retrofits, renewable energy, affordable housing, infrastructure, and transit. Our goal for this green, strong economy is to move towards a more clean tech manufacturing and research. We will ensure that we have a smooth transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy without a sudden disruption of industry and business. The difference between a green platform and an NDP platform is that we will not compromise on social justice issues. Thank you very much.
And to be blunt, if I thought the Green Party was going to compromise on social justice issues, I wouldn't sit here. $300 billion in this economy is generated by small business. Small business is the backbone of the country. I had a small business once, and I feel like the tax system beat me out of it. I've now worked for large corporations, and I've seen how large corporations can take advantage of the fact that they are the friends of government. They can get things done more or less their way. Right now in this country, there are, I wrote it down, 8 million jobs in small business. In the oil and gas sector, there are 62,000 jobs. And in the clean economy, right now, there are 500,000 jobs. We are in the middle of this transition, and the focus of the Green Party isn't simply energy and transformation. It's what comes out the other end. We will be moving off gas, off fossil fuels very quickly. Our party is determined that that happens smoothly. The transition won't put anybody out. It won't probably cost anybody anything. It means likely the next car you buy may be an electric car. Because if the Green Party has any influence, and we will, the solar panel on your roof that you can get a subsidy for will power your house, will power your car, and once it's paid for, it will be zero cost for the rest of its existence. Imagine not going to the gas pumps. That's part of the Green Party promises. We're going to eliminate the gas pump. And when we do, the wealth that we create will be the sustainable economy that our children will live with. Automation's coming. Automation is one of those grand challenges. It could be great, it could be awful. We need to look forward to how the economy is going to evolve in the next generation and plan for it. So what we need to do, all of us, no matter who gets elected, is think seriously about how automation is going to figure into the workplace, how it's going to displace people. When you displace workers, you take people off a payroll. You make the country a poorer place. So we need to manage how we do all of these things.
Thank you.
And I'm done.
So the question was, what are the People's Party would do to build the economy? We would get the government out of economy. Our economy is over-regulated, and it picks favors. We see that in the system of corporate welfare, for instance. George is right. Small business is the biggest generator of income and jobs in Canada, but our governments keep on getting in the way of entrepreneurs. And instead, they favor their corporate patrons. We've seen that when they're giving subsidies to SNC-Lavalin, to Loblaws, to Bombardier, that don't really help our economy as much. So we would end corporate welfare, and we would reduce the tax rate on small business from 15% to 10%. When Maxime Bernier, the leader of the party, was the Minister of Industries, he put into action a system of deregulation. He deregulated the telecoms industry, and that's why we pay less than we used to before. So he's all about competition. And what encourages people to innovate, to be entrepreneurs, is to make profits. Currently, 60% of our income is going to taxes. So there's a disincentive for our entrepreneurs, our young people, to do well, to invest in the economy, to invest in themselves. For instance, June 10th is Tax Freedom Day. So all Canadians work from January 1st to June 10th for the government. All that time you put in is for the government, and then government decides how to spend your money. So we'll have a flat tax system. So other than reducing the tax on businesses, we would eliminate the capital gains tax. Many countries don't have that. In Canada, it's 50%. The NDP wants to bring it up to 75%. why would somebody want to bother starting a business if half the money is going to go to government? So we would have a flatter tax system whereby, right? Oops. Well, that's my favorite subject.
Okay. All right. So what is your party's plan to strengthen the economy? I mean, I think I would start by saying that if you believe in social justice and you believe in strong social programs to have a healthy society, then you need to think about how you create economic growth and you create wealth. Our government came to power saying that we would invest in infrastructure, we would invest in communities, we would invest in our economy and in Canadians, after a decade of some of the slowest growth that we've seen in decades. We have done this by developing and implementing both a short-term and a longer-term economic strategy. As I said in my opening remarks, we launched a $180 billion infrastructure program to strengthen core infrastructure needs in cities and towns all over the country, and in strengthening trade-enabling infrastructure. We developed and launched a $60 billion climate plan to focus on things like green infrastructure and a range of other things. We invested in strengthening the middle class and middle class families through the Canada Child Benefit, which created greater purchasing power amongst folks who received it. In the short term, that is working, and I would just list a number of facts. The fact is economic growth has been amongst the best in the G7. A fact is that Canadians have created 1 million jobs since 2015. A fact is that unemployment is as low as it's been in 40 years, and a fact is that the average Canadian family is $2,000 better off. But we've always also looked forward in terms of areas that are going to be significant in terms of global growth, and where can Canada play a role? Where can we have a competitive advantage? And we're looking at areas like clean tech, which is where I come from, artificial intelligence, digital technology, areas that are going to be important as we move through an energy transition where hydrocarbons become a less significant driver of economic growth for Canada going forward. We have developed a very strong economy, and we are moving forward to ensure that prosperity continues on into the future. You're going to get your exercise.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will ask you.
No. I don't think Andrew is going to.
Is it clockwise?
Yeah, but
Andrew hasn't spoken yet.
Oh,
he didn't
sorry.
get a chance to answer you yet.
So sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Without a strong economy, we simply won't have the resources or the funds to look after the important services like healthcare and education and other things that we hold near and dear to our hearts. So to stimulate the economy, a Conservative government will lower taxes. We've already announced that we're going to lower universal tax rate for all Canadians so that $450 extra will be in your pockets. We're also going to have a tax credit for young families with young children. We're going to reduce regulation. So for every new regulation that comes in, 2 have to be eliminated. We're going to rework the mortgage stress test and extend the amortization period to 30 years so that people have a chance to buy their first home. We're going to invest in green technology to help fight climate change. And we're going to export this technology globally. Canada should be a world leader in green tech. We're going to reverse the tax changes to small businesses that the Liberals have brought in. We're going to negotiate new free trade agreements, not with dictatorships, but with countries that have economies like ours. We're also going to balance the budget, and we're not going to do it by cutting services. We're going to be doing it by cutting waste in government and wasteful spending. We will not be buying pipelines. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have storm clouds on the horizon. We could have a recession within the next 12 months. How can we trust the Liberals to run our economy during bad times when they can't even run the economy during good times? We need a Conservative government who has the experience that got us through the last Great Recession as the strongest economy in the G7, and that's what we will do again if we enter a recession going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we go to the next question. What will you do to ensure Iranian Canadian can receive consular service in Iran in the absence of Canadian embassy in Iran? And how will you and your party address the difficulty Iranian facing acquiring visa?
one of the grand things of looking at a problem from 6,000 miles away is the solutions seem really simple. Unfortunately, as you get closer to understanding what the problem really is, the solutions become a great deal more complicated and a great deal more nuanced. I've had the good fortune to travel in the Middle East twice. I've lived outside of North America a little bit, and I've started to understand the enormous complexities and challenges posed by the relationship between Iran and the rest of the world. In an ideal world, which isn't going to happen, we'd all get along, this wouldn't be a problem. And the reality is, I don't know that there's a smooth answer that I can give you. I don't think, if we're a country that stands for the things we actually stand for, then what we need to do is stand in hard times. So philosophically, I think Canada needs to say, until we can see things on a parallel line at least, we need to keep at arm's length. And that's one perspective. And the other perspective is, there are people in this room who need to be able to connect. So I think a third country, a third party place is where we need to go in terms of what Green would do. We'll just try to convince, it sounds corny, we'll try to convince everybody we need to get along. And philosophically, this is a tough question. I have no easy answer. If I did, we'd be doing it.
Thank you.
I think the relations between Canada and Iran were first established in 1955. And one of the reasons the embassy was closed is it was suggested that the Iranian people posted at the embassy here were investigating people, spying on other Iranians that were here. So that was an issue, and that was one of the reasons I understand that our government, the Canadian government, took umbrance at that, because that's not what your embassies are supposed to do. But for practical purposes, I talk to, when I'm door knocking, talk to Iranian families, and they can't get divorces registered, adoptions done, so for practical purpose, for humankind, obviously we need to have some sort of method, conveyance for people to do their day-to-day work. And it's not unusual. For instance, I understand the Americans work through the Swiss in Iran to do visa issuance and simple things like that. So I think we can hold our nose as Canadians and help other Canadians who are of Iranian origin and open up a mission in one of these third countries so that people can do their simple transactions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we were and we remain supportive of working towards the reestablishment of diplomatic relationships with Iran. There were several exchanges of diplomats over the course of the first couple of years that we were in office. That, however, became much more difficult with some of the behavior of the Iranian regime with respect to people like Ms. Mulvaney. I would say that the Conservative Party was extremely critical of any discussions with the government of Iran around the reestablishment of any form of diplomatic relations. In the short term, while we look to pathways that we can move towards diplomatic relations, which will require better behavior on the part of the government of Iran, the biggest issue are consular services, visas for people who want to visit, a range of the kinds of services that my colleague over here was talking about. In the short term, we've taken some small steps in that regard, particularly with the creation of a dedicated visa unit in the embassy in Ankara for Iranian Canadians. Before, the Iranian Canadians used to have to go to Ankara and get in line behind all the Turkish folks. We have created a dedicated processing unit to reduce processing times to ensure that when people have to go to Ankara, that they can do it quickly. We've been looking at what might be possible in terms of online processing of some elements of the visa, as well as potentially doing biometrics at some other embassy or consular establishment. That's not simple. There are custody issues, there are security issues, but certainly that's the direction that we would like to go, is to find a pathway to make it easier for people to be able to access consular services in the absence of an embassy at the present time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan, there reality is that you made promises in the last election to reestablish relations with Iran, and you didn't get it done. You did not open the embassy again as well. So how can we trust that you're going to do it in the next 4 years if you get the opportunity? The reality is that as Member of Parliament in North Vancouver, it is our responsibility, my responsibility, if I am your Member of Parliament, to make life better for people who live in North Vancouver. And one of the ways to help make life better for the Iranian Canadian community is to help alleviate the problems they have in getting visas issued and getting legal documents certified. And one way to do that is to open an agency office in Tehran, perhaps in another embassy, perhaps not. But the key is, as Member of Parliament, I will work to make sure that your lives are easier and better, and I will work to get this done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to take a very important moment to remember that we're talking about people's lives. So I remember the feeling when we finally got the letter in the mail that my husband was going to finally be a Canadian. We're talking about immigration policy affects people's lives. So without a Canadian embassy in Iran, Canadian citizens visiting Iran, you here, have virtually no consular support from our government. And as numerous cases have indicated, the lack of a Canadian embassy has significantly curtailed Canada's ability to stand up for citizens' rights while they are visiting Iran. Let's get this straight here. So in 2012, the Harper government cut off diplomatic ties with Iran, shutting down the Canadian embassy in Tehran and expelling Iranian diplomats from Ottawa. Then let's follow it through. In 2015, the Trudeau government promised to reestablish ties with, if elected. 4 years later, there's still no diplomatic relationship. I understand that there are many obstacles. Liberals did not have to vote for the Conservative motion to halt efforts to reestablish ties with Iran. The NDP was the only party to oppose that motion, and Wilkinson, I believe you abstained. I am so proud of my colleague Jenny Kwan, the NDP MP critic for immigration, because she has stood up for Iranians numerous times in Parliament, whether it's improving foreign credential recognition, improving family reunification so that we can have our grandparents here. An NDP government knows how immigration policy, if done right, can strengthen families, can strengthen communities, and will strengthen our country. We, the NDP, are committed to working towards a Canadian foreign policy that will improve diplomatic relationship engagement with Iran and build peace and promote human rights.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We go for the third question. If elected on October 21st, what will be your priorities for the North Vancouver?
Well, the biggest issues in North Vancouver are affordability and transportation. So our parties on affordability is quite, we believe that it's all about taxes. We will be reducing taxes, reducing regulation, and that would help people in North Vancouver tremendously. As I was saying earlier, our flat tax system would inject money very quickly into people's pockets so they can spend it at will. I know the other parties have talked about establishing a SkyTrain into North Vancouver. That's wonderful, but that's a provincial jurisdiction. We could support spending there because there is a federal port, so there is some federal jurisdiction in approving that spending. But if we're going to be honest about it, transportation falls under Section 92 under the provincial purview. As far as affordability, housing affordability is a big issue in North Vancouver. Again, it's regulation. We can do our part by having lower taxes, no GST, to help with and monitoring foreign monies coming in. Apparently, some monies are coming in that are illegally sourced. So as a federal government, we could be being more, apply the rule of the law there. And that's what we would be doing to help North Vancouver. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would say that there are kind of three different priorities. I think the first one is climate change. And I think North Vancouverites want a government that is going to aggressively deal with the climate crisis. And that is something certainly that you have heard very strongly from us in terms of a very detailed plan. And I know there are others who also feel the same way in terms of it being a high priority with you, Ryan. And then it's transportation and it's affordable housing. On the transportation side of things, there has been significant work done over the last 4 years, largely as a result of stable 10-year funding for infrastructure that our government provided. It is notionally true that non-interprovincial transportation networks are provincial, but it's never been the case in Canada that municipalities or provinces have been able to bear that burden themselves. And so whether it's a Conservative government or a Liberal government, there has always been a federal role in the funding of large-scale infrastructure projects. We developed a process in North Vancouver between the province, the 3 municipalities, and the federal government called INSTEP, which really looked at the transportation needs on the North Shore. And out of that came a number of different things. A new C-bus, so 10-minute C-bus sailings, additional bus services, a new B line, which will be starting, 2 new B lines, which will be starting in the phase 3 of the Mayor's program. Significant work on Highway 1, started by Mr. Saxton when he was the MP, and then added to over the last 4 years. And looking at the SkyTrain. We have funded a study with the province to look at a business case for bringing a rapid transit system to North Vancouver to start to address some of these issues. In terms of affordable housing, that's a critical issue here. We have launched a $40 billion national housing strategy to build new units. It will also include a rental supplement that will come into place next year to try to deal with higher rental housing prices. And then a first-time homebuyers incentive to try to give a pathway to home ownership to young families. We have focused very much on that. Those are very much priorities for North Vancouver. They're very much priorities for me. They have been for 4 years, and they will continue to be if, in fact, I'm re-elected.
Thank you.
Since the last week of June, my team has knocked on close to 15,000 doors. I personally have knocked on about 5,000, which is maybe part of the reason why I'm losing my voice right now. But I can tell you that I learned a lot from listening to North Vancouverites. And definitely climate change is one of the biggest issues on people's minds. And that's why the Conservative Party has a clear plan to deal with climate change. First of all, we need to invest in new technologies. It was old technologies that got us into this problem. Now we need new technologies to get us out of it. For example, Carbon Engineering, which is a Squamish-based company, has developed proprietary technology that takes carbon out of the air, turns it into tablets that can then be used to create energy. We need to get behind companies like this so that Canada can be a world leader in clean tech. And we can export that technology. That's where Canada can make a difference, in exporting its technology, because we really have very little emissions. If you look on a global scale, it's less than 2%. But we can affect those countries that have big emissions by exporting our technology. Traffic is a huge issue here on the North Shore. And yes, the federal government does have a part to play in this. It was the federal government that paid for the Canada line, which is tremendously popular. So as Member of Parliament, I will advocate for a SkyTrain to come to North Vancouver. Also, I've been asked by many people in the Persian community about a community center. Now, this is not something that a government would typically pay for, but it is something that your Member of Parliament can help you develop a business plan, a model for, get a committee together, and help get it going. But your community needs to get the ball going, and I'm happy to assist in that regard. And housing affordability is another issue that we need to work on. Our government would give more federal land towards housing, which would help with housing affordability. We would also, as I mentioned earlier, rework the stress test and increase the amortization period for homeowners, which will help them purchase their homes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our priorities are the priorities that I have as a mom, those that I've heard repeatedly on the doorstep, those that I've heard from the business community and from the frontline workers that are working with the poorest and most vulnerable here in North Vancouver. And everyone knows it, we're in a housing crisis. And I and my party are committed to bringing affordable, social, and cooperative housing to North Vancouver now. We have not had investments at all in the past 4 years into housing, and let's be honest, we haven't had investments into housing in decades. I'm dedicated to making life in North Vancouver more affordable by investing in universal pharmacare, vision care, and dental care, other priorities I've heard on the doorstep. But we also need federal support when it comes to affordable childcare and post-secondary education. It is impossible to rent an apartment here that is significant enough to house 2 children and pay for their childcare on the median wage. Finally, and upfront in everything we know and we do, economic growth, climate change, inequality, they have to be dealt with in a holistic fashion. The policies that we make today are going to shape the world that we leave to our children. So we are committed, as mentioned before, to a bold climate action and meeting the science-based targets. We will listen and act on the science. And this includes major investments into transit and infrastructure, because it's so important that we build on the great work of our MLA, our NDP MLA, Bowen Ma, when it comes to transit. And I know, I've heard, we need rapid transit right now. And so when you vote for an NDP MP, as time has told, you get someone that's on your side and fighting for you and your priorities.
Thank you.
This is a problem. This is Jonathan's summer newsletter, 2019. And if you can see on the very bottom, there's 3 words underlined: address climate change. If it's a big priority, well, in the Green Party, it is the major priority. In terms of transportation and issues that face the North Shore, I think climate change actually is something that we should be absolutely dealing with. The previous Liberal government, provincially, created a study to run rapid transit from Squamish to the North Shore and over town. That study sits. To run a SkyTrain from here to Vancouver is somewhere north of $10 billion. It's a great idea, but as things sit now, it's not going to happen. It's in what they call a 50-year plan. Some of us won't be here to ride that train. So this is a green proposal. I'm trying to see if it will fly, but here it goes. If we were to stop the tankers coming past the Second Narrows Bridge, we could construct at grade a rail line that would then take rapid transit. We could partner with CIF, who wants to do this. And we could run rapid transit at grade to the North Shore for about 8 cents on the dollar of the current proposal for a SkyTrain system. There's a lot of innovative thinking to be had, and that's part of what the Green Party is going to do.
Thank you.
Question number 4. The Persian community is the largest minority community in North Vancouver. How you have tried to engage with our community in the past and during this election campaign, and most important, for the future?
So yeah, the Persian community for sure is the largest community in North Vancouver. I think it is either the number 1 or number 2 largest Iranian community in Canada. There's one other riding in Toronto, which has a very large Iranian Canadian community. I have certainly worked to have strong engagement with the community during the past election and of course over the last 4 years. Over the last 4 years, I've held a number of town hall discussions that are focused on Iranian Canadians and issues of interest to Iranian Canadians. As the Liberal candidate, I just had one about a month ago at the Delbrook Rec Centre for Iranian Canadians. My constituency office deals with many issues that are brought in: immigration, visa issues, by members of the Iranian Canadian community. I have had direct engagement with many of the organizations, the Iranian Canadian organizations, the CIF for sure, but the Imam Ali Center, Poetry Reading Group that meets at Woodcroft, a whole range of those. I have participated regularly in Nowruz events in both North and West Vancouver, and recently in the Persian Night, which was a fundraiser for Lionsgate Hospital. I have members of the Iranian Canadian community on my Liberal riding executive to ensure that we as a party have perspective with respect to the issues of concern to the community. And I have a number of members of the Iranian Canadian community who sit on my election steering committee. So certainly I very personally very much recognize the importance of the community in North Vancouver and have done, I am aware of the issues and that I am engaged with the community on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Thank you. When I first decided to run for Member of Parliament back in 2007, the largest single event that I held was with the Persian community. Over 200 people came out to that event, and I wanted to listen to learn from them what the issues are that they're facing. This election as well, the largest single event that we've held was with the Persian community, the Iranian Canadian community. And so I'm proud to have several members of the Iranian Canadian community on my team, volunteering on my team. In fact, my assistant here is also from the Persian community. And I can tell you, when I was member of Parliament, I was happy to help Iranian Canadians who needed help. And I think back to this one lady who was in her mid-30s, and she'd just been diagnosed with cancer. And she came into my office and she was crying because she had to go through chemotherapy, and she was scared because she didn't want to go through it alone, and that she couldn't bring her mother from Iran to Canada because she couldn't get a visa. And I was able to facilitate and help get her mother a visa so she could be with her daughter during her chemotherapy. And when her mother arrived, they came into my office and they were both crying, and they brought these wonderful pistachio nuts as a gift. And I tell you, that stands out in my mind as one of the most momentous times that I've had to help somebody, and that was a Persian Canadian. I was helpful in bringing the Prime Minister to the Nowruz event organized by the CIF a few years ago, and I also brought senior ministers to meet with the Persian community when I was member of Parliament, and so I will certainly continue to engage, and I've also been practicing my Farsi. Merci.
So as a teenager growing up here in North Vancouver, I had many friends whose families came here from Iran, and I have to say I was always very warmly invited into their houses, and I was always given way too many sweets as we talked politics. And actually, I want to say as well, not only did we talk politics, I would often be brought into dance circles in the middle of the living room, which I really, after a lot of tea had been drunk. I have many incredible volunteers that have been dedicating hours upon hours to my campaign who are new immigrants here from Iran. And I am so grateful because a lot of those people that are volunteering, I'm not the only area in which they volunteer. They volunteer in many different areas giving back to our community here in North Vancouver. And I am so grateful for their work. I really believe that a good part of leadership, the most important part of leadership is listening. And I've heard over tea about the struggles that Iranians face here, and one of the things that I haven't heard people speak about is discrimination. And that's one thing that I feel and my party feels very strongly about. We need to ensure that we have a very inclusive Canada and that people are not held back based on where they come from. So for this election, I've given interviews, I've prioritized giving interviews in Farsi, I've spoken with media, and I've also done Instagram Live, that's intimidating, with leaders of the community. And when I'm talking about the future, you can always come into my office anytime, my door is open, I'm happy to chat. And then I'm also, when it comes to the future, I'm very hopeful that I will be invited to more dance parties. Thanks, guys.
I'm the father of 3 lovely children, all of whom grew up, found their way through life. And I've been thinking over the last couple of weeks, Who of their friends came from somewhere else? And the honest truth is, I really don't know. They're friends of my kids. They're young men, they're young women. There's my friend Arian, who I've known as young folks. I drove people home from school for years and years and years, and never really paid attention to where they were from. It was how they got along. Were they friends? Were they nice people? Were their folks nice? But the notion of where people came, I think I've been a little bit colorblind in this, and I think that's a good thing. I've not made a distinction between one community and the next. It's, do you guys play the same football team? Do you young men play soccer together? And can we stop fighting in the back of the car? I taught at BCIT for 20 years, and the same thing applies. If I'm going through we're probably 800-900 students I went through, and I couldn't tell you with any accuracy who was from where, because they were keen to learn what there was to learn. So the distinction between, at that generation level, between everybody and everybody else for me is not something I've been able to do. I really want to commend the man at the end of the table for the list of things he's done. I think as a politician and as a community member, it's an astounding set of accomplishments. If I'm elected, I would hope to do the same.
It's wonderful to have diversity in the Canadian population, but it's unity that's our strength. And the way we would help Iranian Canadians is treating them just as Canadians. We are all Canadians together here. When people go into hyphenating Canadians, Persian Canadians, Muslim Canadians, Indo-Canadians, Chinese Canadians, it makes us lesser Canadians. So we would not fall into that trap. One thing that we would do is to help the people who come from Iran integrate into Canada. Currently, with the Liberal government, there are no language training facilities so that people who come here can learn the official languages. Accreditation is a big problem. We don't have a fast way to accredit people who come from other countries. When I take a taxi with North Shore Taxi, chances are the guy's an engineer or a nurse or a doctor, and so that's an issue. So the way to help our Persian community in Canada is to treat them equally as Canadians and to integrate them as fast as they can so that they flourish like the rest of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
We go for the last question. How do you see Canada's position on the world stage currently, and what will be your party's international priorities?
Well, Canada is loved and admired on the world stage. And we can all be very, very proud of that, because we've been peacemakers and we need to continue to be peacemakers. We've taken some hits in the last couple of years. The Prime Minister's trip to India was an embarrassment. His trip to China didn't go too well either. He was supposed to go there to sign a free trade agreement, and instead he went and lectured on human rights and other things, and the Chinese asked him to leave. The Philippines canceled a defense contract with Canada, $300 million for helicopters because of comments made by the Prime Minister about their president. And Japan's angry at Canada because we stood them up at a trade meeting. So we need to get back with our allies and friends and trading partners. We need to restore Canada's position on the world stage. And Canada's a very large country, geographically, but we have a very small population. We only have the population equivalent to California. It's 37 million people. So we're a trading nation. We've got natural resources. We have to get those natural resources to market so that we can help pay for our health care and our education. And so we need to sign more free trade agreements. When the Conservative government was elected in 2006, we had free trade agreements with 5 countries. By the time we left office in 2015, we had free trade agreements with 45 countries. We need to build on that record of free trade agreements. And I'm not talking about agreements with dictatorships. I'm talking about agreements with countries that have economies similar to ours, countries like Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. These are the priorities of a Conservative government, to grow our economy and to grow our relationships with our traditional trading partners. Thank you.
the Senior Advisor for Global Affairs Canada, I've had the honor to represent Canada in South Africa, in Mexico, at the United Nations, in many different cities around this world. And what I have to say is it's pretty incredible the way people are ready and willing to work with Canada. We have very strong values from which to stand on. And we as Canadians, we're proud of our role in the world. The part that I am particularly pleased with as an advisor on poverty reduction is how we take leadership in helping the poorest and the most vulnerable. So Trudeau has said a lot of pretty words, but his actions don't match his sales pitch. Now that's the line that I have here. But I can tell you from my personal experience, I was so happy when we said that we were going to go around the world with a feminist international assistance policy. That's incredible. Let's empower women all around the world. But the thing is, when you look at the facts behind it, and this is public, this is not me using any of my information, the Liberals are spending significantly less than the Conservatives did on our official development assistance. And that's the same with Indigenous people's files. That's the same with so many. So please pay attention to the words and then look up the facts.
Thank you.
Canada on the world stage. We used to be the good guys. I remember traveling through Cyprus years ago, a country that was war-torn. And the line between the two sides was staffed by young Canadian soldiers wearing blue helmets. And we were the peacekeepers of the planet. The Suez Crisis, which predates most of us in Europe, but not all of us, was solved by Lester Pearson, a Canadian Prime Minister who won a Nobel Prize. Canada has, at times, on the world stage, punched way above our weight class. We have been an example to the planet in a lot of ways, and I think we need to return to that place. We don't need to get involved with conflicts, we need to solve conflicts. I was asked in a meeting a couple of months ago, what about the shipyards down here building battleships? And I thought, why are we not building hospital ships? Why are we not creating peace-making tools that we can deliver to the rest of the world? Why are we not being those people? Why are we being dragged into the processes we're being dragged into? This country currently is building armaments for Saudi Arabia. We're building machines that kill people. That's not Canada.
Yeah, it's very hypocritical of a government to be virtue signaling and then sending arms to Saudi Arabia to kill people. We spend about $5 billion a year in foreign aid. Our focus will be unapologetically pro-Canadian. Our First Nations don't have clean drinking water. They don't have power in their encampments. We will be spending money there first before sending it overseas. One of the reasons why we can't come to trade deals with other countries is because of the dairy cartel we have in Canada. We have a supply management system whereby only Canadian milk producers can sell milk to us, and they have certain quotas. And they only comprise 10% of our farmers, but they're a very powerful political lobby. So the reason why we can't come to deals with NAFTA or with the European countries is because we are pandering to the dairy cartel. So that's one of the things we would abolish so that we could have free trade agreements so that the Canadians prosper. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, my academic background is international relations. Both of my graduate degrees are in international relations. And I am quite proud of the work that this government has done with respect to foreign affairs. Canadian foreign policy in the post-World War II era, until the Harper government, was about trying to be a constructive enabler for difficult conversations in the international environment, recognizing we're not a major power, we are a middle power. Under the Harper government, we went away from that on issues of climate change. We were the perennial recipient of the fossil awards. We were not engaged very much in multilateral organizations. We have re-engaged. We have re-engaged in conversations around climate, and quite important in the Paris Agreement. We have re-engaged in multilateral initiatives such as peacekeeping. I'm not sure about you, but I'm quite happy to be part of a government that stands up for human rights. We held the presidency of the G7 last year. We raised a number of issues around plastics pollution and the sustainability of our ocean. We hosted a major international conference on oceans with Kenya in Nairobi. We actually signed 3 different trade agreements over the last little while. We are now the only G7 country that has free trade access to all other G7 countries. So the comment about trade deals, I would check my facts. We have focused a significant portion of our international development agenda on women and girls, and as you will know, international development is one area that the Conservatives have indicated that they will cut significantly if they are to be elected. Under a Liberal government, going forward, Canada will continue to aim to play a constructive role with respect to international peace and security. With regard to international development, we will play a role of addressing our own climate emissions within Canada and going out into the international community to try to bring about a consensus and work on a collective basis to ensure that we are addressing what is a fundamental issue that cannot be solved by any one country alone. That is what a Liberal government's foreign policy has looked like, and that's what it will.
Thank you.
As I know, a lot of you have a question that they want to ask the candidate. We have a closing statement, and after that, we have a refreshment. Then you can ask your question from the candidates since they are here. You can individually go to them and ask your question. Now we're going for a closing statement. It will be in 2 minutes. If you want, you can use the podium, or you want to be your table.
Am I going first? So thanks again to everyone here for joining us. Thanks again to all of the candidates that are here on the table. I'm actually having fun at these things because I think it's really important that we get our message out, because as I said, leadership is about listening, committing, and then following through on actions. The question that I hope you're asking yourself this election, with consecutive and Liberal governments, why has the rich and powerful benefited so greatly while the rest of us continue to fall behind and have trouble making ends meet? It's all about choices. It is not about choices between foreign assistance and our home. It's about choices of giving billionaires subsidies, oil and gas, $3.3 billion a year. That's the modest estimate of what this government has done. Our new deal for people is all about making life better for you and your children. It's about you using your health card, not your credit card, to get the medication that you need. It's about putting caps on telecom companies that have lobbied this government hundreds and hundreds of times, resulting in the highest costs in the world. Thing is, life happens, and we all know and we believe as Canadians that when something happens, you reach out your hand and you lift someone up, and then we're all going to rise. And that is what leadership under Jagmeet Singh is all about. By sending me to Ottawa, I promise that you will have someone that is on your side, fighting as hard as I can with love and courage. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
So when I listen to me talk, I think Green Party is just a one-trick pony. They just want to fix the climate. And that's not exactly true. But if we don't do that first, everything else we're talking about in this room won't happen very happily. This is not just an election, this is a referendum on climate change. And if you believe it's a crisis, and if you believe we're up against the wall, you'll vote green. And if you don't, you won't. And it's that simple. I'm in this because I think, realistically, Green may get 20 seats in a federal election. We'd love to be the government, but no. But if we get 20 seats, and there's a minority government, We will bring all the moral suasion and political suasion we can to bear to make the changes we think are important. Remember the notion of proportional representation. You were told in the last election that would be the last election fought by first past the post. Well, we'll bring it back. It's not on anybody else's platform, but we'll bring that back. We're going to bring back conversation in government, not dictatorship. Some parties do really well in power, and the things they do well, we acknowledge. The things they don't do well, we'll tackle. So if you vote green, that's what you're going to get. And if you don't vote green, this is what you're going to get.
Thank you.
Thank you again to the Canadian Federation, Iranian Federation for holding the event. People in Canada are informed and politically wise, especially here on the North Shore. Unfortunately, the quiet people are being ignored and subsets of Canadians are being pandered to the detriment of all. I chose to run for the People's Party of Canada because it's a conservative, libertarian party that doesn't pander to special interests based on divisions of race, religion, gender, or culture. Maxime Bernier, the leader of the party, is a lawyer, a director of an economic think tank, elected 4 times as member of parliament, a minister of industry, a minister of foreign affairs, a minister of state. He's a good man. He's an experienced man that can lead us through that recession that is impending. I don't think the drama teacher or the insurance salesman have the same credentials that he has. The others will talk about diversity, but we have to remember as Canadians, it's unity that's our strength. And the People's Party of Canada is all about simple systems, a lower flat tax system without the boutique tax credits that are complicated, and for a way for government to dictate how we should live our lives. We believe in practical solutions to mitigate against climate change, and we believe in sustainable immigration so that all newcomers are set up to succeed. And we believe in upholding the Charter of Rights for freedom of speech. We're a brand new party, but we're growing at an astounding rate. There's a lot of support behind us. North Vancouver is a swing riding, is up in the air. We have a chance here. Nationally, we're polling at about 20 seats, and North Vancouver could be one of them, and I hope for your support. Good Hafiz.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the CIF for organizing this, and thank you to everybody for attending this important exercise in the democratic process, and thank you to all of my colleagues for this interesting conversation. Our government came to power on a broad platform to make positive and progressive change for Canada. As I noted earlier, a very recent academic study that looked at what our government has achieved says that we have achieved, or are on our way to achieving, 92% of the 350 promises we made in 2015, which is the highest level of achievement of any government in 35 years. Our 2019 platform builds on what has been achieved over the past 4 years. If re-elected, we would continue to build a thoughtful, inclusive, just, and progressive Canada. Our record is one of building a welcoming society, getting rid of two-tier citizenship, which the Conservatives have brought in. We're creating a society where all Canadians have equal rights and are treated equally. We have brought in a detailed climate plan to fight the issue of climate change, and we have committed to net zero by 2050. We need to work together to ensure we are addressing what is one of the critical issues of our day. We have created a strong economy. 1 million jobs created in the last 4 years, the lowest unemployment in 40 years, one of the strongest economies in the G7. We have the lowest poverty rate that has been in existence since we started collecting statistics on poverty. And we have engaged in a progressive and thoughtful foreign policy that is far closer to what Canada has tried to do in the post-World War II era than what we have seen in recent years. We are proposing to build on this, and on October the 21st, I would ask you to re-elect a Liberal government that will continue the work of building an inclusive, a thoughtful, a prosperous, and a progressive Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cami, and thank you all for staying right up until the end. I know it's not easy to listen to politicians for 2 whole hours. Give yourselves a round of applause. Canada is the best place on earth, but it didn't get this way by accident. It got this way because of a lot of hard work by a lot of people and a lot of good decisions by a lot of good governments. Unfortunately, I cannot say that we have a good government in Ottawa today. When the Conservatives left office in 2015, Canada was the envy of the world. We had the lowest taxes in 50 years, a strong economy, a balanced budget, and record transfers to the provinces for healthcare and education. And I should also point out that the Conservative government brought in the 10-year super visa, which many Iranian Canadians have benefited from in having their family members come to Canada. When I was your MP, I was fortunate to be in a position where I could help bring good projects to North Vancouver. Projects like the film school at Capilano University, where now hundreds of students from around the world come to North Vancouver to study film. I was also instrumental in getting funding for the Polygon Gallery, which is an iconic building on the waterfront. The soccer bubble at Windsor School, where now 5,000 kids don't have to practice outdoors in the rain in the fall, because we know North Vancouver has a lot of rain. They can now be undercover, and their parents as well. And I helped bring funding for the interchanges that are now being built over Highway 1. But there's more work to do, and there's more work to be done. And as your Member of Parliament, I will continue to bring good projects to North Vancouver. I will continue to implement a plan to fight climate change, to solve our traffic problems on the North Shore, housing affordability, and to lower taxes for all Canadians. I want to work to make life better for people working in North Vancouver. I want to work to make life better for Iranian Canadians living in North Vancouver as well. But to do so, I need your help. I need to get elected on October the 21st. So on October the 21st, please vote for Andrew Saxton. Merci.
Thank you very much.